Hello, this is Uncle Jim. Today I'm doing a little experiment here for Julio. I was talking to Julio. He's in the hospital right now, and we're hoping for better news today. And I was talking to Julio last night, and we got on the subject of 44 Russian, and he loads for 44 Russian. So I told him I was thinking about doing some 44 Russian just for volume's sake and being quiet, suppressed, especially in the lever action. And so this is today's experiment. And I told him I realized I didn't have anything to trim to length the 44 Russian. And I had ordered a pilot for my Forster hand crank trimmer. And that's coming, and that was the cheapest way to find out if I'm going to like it or not, and if the lever actions like it or not, feeding wise. So there's several reasons for this. One is Trail Boss, which is ideal for super quiet stealth loads, is getting harder to get, and I want to use like any powder that I want, pretty much, and keep the volume up in the powder without dead airspace, which I was getting with 44 Special. Now the 44 Special, where is that bugger? 44 Special did this, all right, with a Keith hollow point I got from Kenny. And so there's something else to consider. So the other thing is I want to be able to recycle old brass, like say you got a split case neck, I can turn it down to 44 Special. If I get more split case necks over the years, it takes a long time, then I can turn it into 44 Russian. Now I can go out and buy Starline 44 Russian right now. I have 3 sources that are in stock, some with free shipping. And I don't have to buy 500 like it's from Starline. You can just buy 100 and see if you like them. However, I don't like the case that short. I don't need it that short, and that might cause issues feeding in the lever action. The contender's not going to care. So, and neither will the revolvers, but this is about being quiet. Anyway, I realized I had nothing to trim these with. And so I improvised, and this is what I came up with. Now, my 44 Special trimmer obviously won't trim that, and Lee doesn't make these for 44 Russian. So that's a little inconvenient. However, my hand crank trimmer will do any size I want. So 44 Russian suggested trim to length in the Lyman manual is 0.965. All right. 44 Special is suggested 1.150. My trimmer for 44 Special does 1.152, which is perfect for me. I could buy one of these and turn it down and cut this off, but then I have to turn the shoulder down also, and that's more expensive and a pain versus just getting a $6 pilot for my Forster trimmer. So until then, I wanted to experiment and come up with a round here, and I asked Julio, hey, do you want to see any videos? He said, why don't you do a video, while he's in the hospital and all wired up and nothing to do to entertain him. And he said, well, why don't you do one if it feeds in a lever action? So I started off trimming this to exactly 1 inch, 1.000, and I liked that because it tapered down about the same as these do. But then I thought, why don't I see how far I can go on a different gauge trimmer and see what that length is. So this is what I came up with to get a nice square trim while I'm waiting for my pilot to come in the mail. So I figured out that a unsized 40 case, a fired 40 case before the bulge, fits perfectly in a 44, and you can use it as a bushing, okay, to keep a nice square cut. So we trimmed off a 40 with pipe cutter and made this little bushing here, which fits perfectly on the collar. So right here on the collar to keep everything square. Now, in hindsight, what I should have done is crimp this first and then cut it. And that way I got nice friction here against this little shoulder, so it stays on there while you're pulling the brass on and off while you're measuring. And I should have done that. So what I ended up doing is just stuffing an O-ring down in here in between so this stays put while the shell is spinning and you pull it off, okay? And that worked. It worked great. It cut a perfect trim, okay? So after I did an inch, which I think was the perfect length, so we'll call it a Russian Magnum, okay? 44 Russian Magnum, or make up some name for it. So I'm kind of stuck on the inch length because when I fed, I can feed 44 mag and 44 special in both my Marlin and Rossi with just straight brass, just like it is. These will feed. However, when you do this without a bullet on it, it gigs up, and that's because it can't really go back on when it's carrying up to go into the chamber. It kind of hiccups in both guns. So obviously it needs a bullet. Once it has a bullet on it, it's fine. Now when you get to 44 Russian, Julio told me that he heard that as long as you're using a longer bullet like the Keith, it will have enough bullet in the Russian length to feed in a lever action most times. Now I want something to feed without a hitch. 44 Special just runs any bullet you want in both lever actions. In 44 Magnum, if your bullet's too long, it can get hitchy in both Marlin and Rossi when they're, out here with the Keith bullet. And it gets a little hitchy, and I want smooth. And so I'm thinking of doing 1 inch, but I decided to go, what I did was I used the 10 millimeter, okay, because I didn't have 44 Russian. Lee does not make this unless you have them custom make you one, but a $6 Pilot on my hand crank trimmer will work just fine. So to save time trimming all that length, cut off a little bit this first. This is an experiment. You're not going to be doing this unless you're going to make your own batch like I want to do my own length. So you trim off, either on the chop saw like blackout or whatever method. Get it close so you're not just wasting all the time on the trimmer. And as a matter of fact, on the Forster, when I have it hooked to a drill, that thing it'll take her right down quick. So I got it close and used the 10 millimeter trimmer and stopped at 1 inch. And then I decided, why don't we just bottom this out with this on here, of course, and see what length that comes out to. And it came out to 9.990, which is also a very good number. Now this was a really beat up piece of brass I used as a dummy round before I cut it down. And I marked it in red so I know what it is and don't get it mixed up. So that's how I improvised. I made a bushing, and it can probably work with different calibers when you're in a pinch and just want to see if you like something or not in a certain length. Here's a little funny side note. See this? When I was digging for some 40, I don't load for 40. That looks like a 40, doesn't it? Same length, everything. It's actually a 357 SIG. Now, I don't know if somebody cut that down. Why would they do that? Because 40 is so plentiful and common. It's just the weird things you find with range brass. All right. So, anyway, I told Julio I'd do a video today, and we'll make up a dummy round or even a live round and see if it works in the lever action. So let me show you how it glitches compared to just these brass, and that's because it became too short. Now, I don't need to cut off that much volume. I just needed a little bit, and this is perfect. So I might make 44 Russian Magnum or 44 Russian Long. We'll come up with a name for it. I don't like it that short at 965, as you could just buy. So let's see what happens. I'll show you what it looks like feeding in a lever. Okay, so let's do the raw brass test. And it's similar to doing a shorty shotgun. Okay, you need to flip it up so you'll see what I mean. So we got our 44 Russian Magnum, and when I rack it, you'll see it doesn't come to the rear like it would with a bullet. Okay, so it's going to hitch until it comes back like this, and then it'll go in. So it just needs that length to help it out. All right, so jeez. So with the bullet on there, it should be good to go at this length. Okay, so since Lee doesn't make the trimmer, I'll be using this, and it's a lot cheaper because these pilots are very inexpensive. And I found some new old stock on eBay, super cheap, shipped. So I just need a 44 pilot. Usually, right now, this is set up for neck trimming. Okay, so I'll put the pilot on here. Normally, you'd put the pilot in first and then lock her down. Now, I got this old Forster trimmer from a guy I knew, and he was moving, didn't want it. It was completely caked in rust, and gave it to me, and so I refurbished it the best I could with some gun coat and cleaned it up, and it works awesome. So for $6 I can make my own Russian of any length I want, because it has a stop on here, and you can control what length you want to trim. Very versatile. And so we'll do that. Now, the lucky thing is it only came with one universal collet here, and it does all my favorite calibers anyway. So I used to use this to make 300 blackout and trim her down. Took the handle off, put a drill on it, and zip. I just come down to the length I wanted. I'll be doing the same thing making Russian, and you only have to do it once. So another side note is I have another thing for this that is coming that's going to be a really fun project. So stay tuned for that. And it has to do with 44. So there's that. So once I get this pilot in a few days, I think I'll make a few Russian Magnums. Okay? Because I like the length for the lever and everything, and I don't need it as short as a Russian. So I'm going to make my own out of some really beat up brass. All right, so also this does neck turning on 308, 300 blackout, but it also does internal neck turning, and I prefer this. This is much easier. You just put this cullet in there, and once the brass is fired, say you tumble it and clean it, before you size it, you use this, and it does the inside neck, and then you don't see any turning on the outside, and it is much faster. So there's that. It's very versatile. Okay, so stay tuned for the thing I got coming for this. This is going to be really awesome. Luckily, I found one, and we'll cover that later. So let's put a bullet in here and see how she feeds. Okay, so this was a really beat up dummy round shell. Cleaned it up a little bit. We trimmed her down to 0.990. A Russian is 0.965, so it's like a Russian Magnum, and I'm liking this length or something similar because I can still load them warm or really light and not worry about powder volume or dead space. Okay, so here's the key style. There's the volume. It's going to be perfect. Here is a Keith. And there's the volume. So good for all things, and lever. So I just took the universal flare die. It'll do any caliber. And flared this. And now we'll seat it and crimp it. Now this bullet's beat up because that was a dummy round that I've been racking through the lever. Plus I pulled it with the prairie dog, so it's scarred up. But it's going to serve our purpose to see what we want today. All right. Okay, so I ran into a snag crimping the bullet with this old 1970 RCBS 44 special set here. And so I took a stick and measured from where the crimp starts. And what was happening is this bottomed out on the shell holder, and it wouldn't go up far enough to crimp. And I didn't realize that this is longer than my other set in 44 Magnum. So this is this die set, and this measurement, a guesstimation, just feeling it to where it touches that crimp shelf. This is a Lee Factory crimp from my 44 Magnum set. I had to use that. And that's the length on here. So I had just enough room to do, if I went all the way down to Russian, which I'm not going to do. Now, another thing is the sizing ring was removed on that set. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, gave it more clearance or what. But that was interesting. I'm going to have to investigate there. So ran into that snag. Anyway, we got it crimped, and we'll see if it feeds in the lever action. Again, this is a beat up bullet I pulled with the pair of pliers just to save a bullet. All right. And now to conclude today's test. So we have a dummy round here. Will it feed in a lever action? So, here's the answer. Oh, like butter. How's that for a trick? Until next time, it also feeds in the Marlin beautifully. I've racked the snot out of both, and that's good news. Now we can continue with loads and see what happens. I'll just get another, once I troubleshoot the crimp thing, I might just get another factory crimp. I need to fulfill the turret anyway. It's only got 3 dies on it. And that'll make life easier for both Special and Magnum. Hope you found this interesting, Julio. We're all pulling for you. And I hope you get better. Until next time, thanks for watching.